All right, good morning. I'm going to be talking to you about domestic violence and minority women and the law. And so I want to start with, I too was a domestic violence victim. That may surprise you, right? I'm going to tell you about my journey with domestic violence. I can recall the very first, contact I had with domestic violence as an adult. I remember I was in school and my friend who was married had gotten divorced all of a sudden, and I couldn't realize why. And there was these rumors that there was domestic violence involved, and I kept thinking, her? No, why would anybody put up with that? But then I got married and I found myself a domestic violence victim. I found it first started with slurs. I was called every name in the book. I was called everything but a child of God. And I remember next, I was pleading with him. He would throw things against the wall and say, you slut, you this, you that. And then he'd throw me on the ground. And I found myself one day, and this is before I had any children, and I found myself running out in the middle of the night, just in my car, going nowhere, thinking, what is this? Is this my life? I was the one that said that would not be me when I was thinking about my friend. I said, I wouldn't put up with that. Who would put up with that? Who's crazy enough to live like that? I found myself there. And then next, I had a child. And then I thought, why am I here? Is this my life? What is this? What is this? And then I remember one night, we were out at a club, and my child was with a babysitter, and he was mad at me for something stupid. He couldn't get money out of an ATM machine. And I remember we went to the car, and he slapped me. And I thought, oh my gosh. And all I could think about was to claw his face and get out that car. And I ran to that club, back to that club. And I said, help me. And the friends that we were with, one of them was his friend. And she said, why are you taking this? What is wrong with you? And it's like she slapped me into consciousness. And I thought, I got to do something. I have a baby. I have a year-old baby. I don't want her to grow up like this. And so that was my introduction to domestic violence. And then later, it evolved even more, where we were going through a divorce. I said, I'm not going to put my child through this. And the next thing I knew, after the divorce, 2 months later, I was in court asking for a protective order. Me, this is my life. And I was thinking, how did I get here? What happened? And I remember being humiliated, having to sit up there in that courtroom and tell that judge how awful my life had been. This person, the judge that I knew, he knew me. I was an advocate at this point. I was an attorney at this point. And I was saying, Judge, this is what happened, And I had to ask the court to protect me and my child. And yes, I got the protective order, but I couldn't say that was a victory. Yes, I needed the protection, but it wasn't a victory at all, because I had to go through such lengths, and I never, ever saw my life in this manner. I never thought that I would ever be in a situation like this. My father didn't ever hit my mother. How did I get here? I didn't grow up with domestic violence. How did I get here? So I want to talk to you today about what is domestic violence, right? Domestic violence is a pattern of abusive behavior in a relationship used to gain control. And that's exactly why it's done. They want to be in control of their victim. 1 in 4 women are going to be in a domestic violence relationship. This is one of the most underreported crimes. And I could think back in my life, and I thought, how many times I pick up the phone to call the police and drop the phone? How many times did I just suffer in silence? To look at us, at my first husband, you would think, oh, they're both intelligent, they're both, college educated people, but no one knew that in that marriage, in that first marriage, that there was a lot of violence going on. My next point is, it happens in all walks of life. Before my introduction to domestic violence, I really thought, oh, that happens to other people. Smart people don't put up with that. No woman, brave woman, or college educated woman, or anyone who's intelligent would put up with that kind of stuff. Nobody does that. Only crazy people put up with that stuff. Especially when it came to my friend, I thought, she's crazy if that's going on. Why would you put up with that? But then I found myself in that situation myself. And then again, it's in all social economical levels. Doesn't matter if you're poor, if you're rich, middle class, all levels. Domestic violence is no stranger to whatever social economical class that you're in. And yes, there are professional women even in that category. I was one of those. In Texas, according to a 2012 report, 114 women were killed in our very state. Of that, there were 188,992 incidents reported. And then also, according to the report, there were hotline calls of 191,301 calls. That's a lot. That tells you that there's a lot of violence going on, whether it's, to everyone's knowledge, or whether people are suffering in silence, or maybe they're just one-time calls or chronic calls. There's a lot of violence going on here. I specifically want to talk to you about minority women, particularly according to my experience with Black women. According to a 2012 national report, it's one of the leading causes of death of Black women. So there are a lot of domestic violence going on, and Black women are dying every day from it. So we can't just turn a blind eye to it, because it's happening, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. 94 of those Black women were killed by people they knew, by their lovers, by their boyfriends, by people they had some kind of relationship with, by their father, their baby's father. It's going on all the time. 64% of those 94% women were wives, ex-wives, or girlfriends. So it just kind of lets you know kind of the situation that in the society that we live in, that it's a chronic problem. So I want to talk now about some of the cultural issues, because I said before my exposure to domestic violence, I really didn't realize it was really going on. I was just thinking, that's just one person. Surely it's not a big deal. But one of the things for me, and that I find with many of my clients, is that it's a private matter, especially in the minority community. Hush, hush. My mother told me when I was growing up, we don't air our dirty laundry. We keep it at home. Nobody should know what goes on in your house. Well, that's the problem. Nobody wants to talk about what goes on in their house. No one wants to talk about their husbands, their boyfriends, their lovers, or calling them names, or calling them all kinds of things, or pushing them, or shoving them, or throwing things. No one wants to talk about it, because we don't talk about that in public. It stays at home. What goes on at home stays at home. Another problem that I see with the minority women, especially the women that I serve, is that we're supposed to be strong, independent women. We're supposed to hold the family together, right? We're supposed to be the core of the family. And so we feel beholden to kind of keep the family together. I used to say, My first husband was just misunderstood. They just don't understand him. I understand him. I can help him. I could help him because I was refusing to acknowledge the problem. And then going to the third point is I felt the sense of loyalty. I didn't want to turn him in. So I knew, we're told, the system, they already have a hard life, it's hard, to get a job, it's hard, to keep a job. They have all these pressures, you have all this racism, and you have all this and this. And there's so much pressure, right? And so don't turn him in, don't make him another statistic, right? So we suffer, and we suffer in silence, right? And so there goes the problem. But the sense of loyalty, not wanting to get him in trouble, not wanting to see him go to jail, not wanting to see anything happen, not wanting to have your children see their father go to jail. You think, I'm just going to work with him. I'm just going to work with him. And for 3 years, I worked with my first husband. And nothing got better. It just got worse. I just found it going worse and worse and worse. We went from verbal abuse, where I was just every name in the book, doing everything you name, to it went to pushing or throwing things, and then it went to pushing, and then it went to violence, where it's punching. Then you also see that in the minority cultures, many times minorities have financial and family pressures. Certainly you have your family who's saying, you better keep, he's a good man, he goes to work every day, he's trying, and you need to hang in there, you need to make it work, and you need to, it's always the woman needs to do something to keep it together, right? So what is this domestic violence? It's not only physical, because we see that as well, where it's actual punching and you shoving, and it's more than that. It's the verbal. No good relationship involves name calling. It's you should not be known by that other word. You should be called your name. It's also physical, of course. But I have clients all the time who say, well, it's just a little shove, it's just a little smack. I'm like, really? It's just a little smack? That's domestic violence. And it's also sexual. I've had clients who said, okay, he rapes me, or he makes me have sex when I don't want to. He makes me have sex with other people. That's domestic violence. And so if you said no and you're forced to anyway, that's domestic violence. Okay? It doesn't matter that you're married. Okay. So one of the reliefs that we have in Texas is, as I referred to in my case, is protective orders. And it's available when there is domestic violence that has occurred. And then also if the court finds that there's likelihood of domestic violence in the future. And it's not only for the person, the victim, but it's also to protect the children. There's so many things that the court can do. It can order that visitation take place outside of this. They can give child support. They can give custody orders within domestic violence protective orders. They can order that person stay away from you, not go to your job, not go to your house, maintain a certain distance. There's all this protection with domestic violence, and so in protective orders. And so I always encourage my clients to go forward with protective orders, because you never know when they're going to be serious, and it escalates into something more serious than just a little slap. As I said, you saw that there are many deaths in Texas every year from domestic violence, because it's one of the most dangerous situations that a woman can be in, and it could cost her life. And I remember a famous slogan when I first started doing domestic violence cases, is that the slogan was by Women's Protective Services, says, she only got flowers once. And I keep thinking, to my clients, I said, okay, well, you think that's just a little simple slap, and you think it's only this, but you never know when we're going to be reading about you, and we're going to be saying, yes, she finally got her flowers, right? And so it protects not only the victim, but her family. And, I always remind women, when you're going for protective orders, be careful, because it's one of the most dangerous times in their lives, because they are, the abuser gets really, really crazy, and can be a very dangerous time for them. And so we always say, be careful. And so I'm going to end with just a little few words of advice, right, for domestic violence women. Be strong, be courageous, because yes, it does take a brave, big step, but you can do it, because you will change the course for your whole family, because the cycle repeats itself. Your daughters see you getting abused, or your sons see you getting abused, they think it's natural, and the cycle continues. So be strong, be careful, because it is dangerous at this time, but also know that at the end, there is a better life for you. There is a good ending to this story. I often remind myself that had I not taken that big step, right, years and years ago, almost 20 years ago now, I would not have gotten the life that I have now. I have another husband, better life, a good life. Every woman deserves to be treated as a queen. And you can have that relationship. You can find that person. Don't settle for domestic violence, because like me, another man will walk in your life and treat you the way that you should be treated. You don't deserve to be treated as a doormat. You don't deserve to be hit on, to be beat on. My parents used to say, we already raised her, you don't need to re-raise her. And so that's exactly is my advice for women in domestic violence. You don't have to be re-raised. You can be treated the way you should be treated.